So you were telling me about the Lancasters and how you invited him because he wanted to start independent Sunday school.
Right. So as soon as I got a chance, I went back over there and found Brother Lancaster and sat down and talked to him and told him what we were doing. That we were trying to form our own little branch was the idea. Of course, we started at a smaller level, like Mom was saying, it was just a Sunday school. But and he said that he had been away from the church for a while, and that he was interested in participating because he and his wife both felt like they needed more of an influence of church in their lives, and they had not been happy with the situation of going to this church that they'd been going to.
So that made you pretty pleased.
So I told him that we could use his help, and that we were it was going to be like the next Sunday we would have our first meeting. And the first time around they didn't come, so I went back over to him and I said, okay, we need you. We need you not only because we want you to come to church, but we need you to help make the church
start
work.
Right.
And so I did get him to come they came to church the next time, and then as soon as he came out one time, then I went up back to his house and called him to be the Sunday school teacher for the adult Sunday school class.
How did he take that?
Well, I told him that he could easily observe that first Sunday that I was too busy, that I was trying to do too many things, that I was leading the music, passing the sacrament, blessing the sacrament, giving talks, teaching Sunday school class, and a whole bit.
And you had 3 kids to do it?
And I needed his help, and I wanted him to teach the adult Sunday school class, and so he kind of squirmed a little and said okay, but he's kind of an egotistical guy too, so I appealed to his ego somewhat.
Sure.
So he came, and he did it, and he did a good job, and brought the family, and we made arrangements for missionaries to come out to teach the family. There were only a handful of missionaries in the whole island of Puerto Rico then, because that was before the church, before the prophet had announced that the black people were to be proselyted and that they could receive the priesthood. So Puerto Rico had not received a lot of focus for missionary work because of the predominance of, I guess, because of the predominance of the race issue in Puerto Rico. And so it took a little work to even arrange for missionaries to be able to come out there where we lived to teach these people, because they had to come all the way from San Juan, which was
40
miles of bad traffic the other way, but they did it, and so they taught the lessons to the whole family. The family was baptized and became a very strong family in the church. They were a big help. And one of the real strengths in that branch that we helped to organize there in Fajardo, Puerto Rico. Through the Lancasters, we met another family named the Colliers. Brother Lancaster and Brother Collier never joined the church, so I don't know I guess we can still call him brother, but...
Brother Collier never joined the church?
Right, they've worked together, and so they knew each other, and they lived nearby also, and once we got to know them, then we started hiring their daughters to be our babysitters, and the Collier girls would come over and babysit for us sometimes, and the church became a topic also of discussion. Sister Collier was very enthusiastic about church, and she had been actually one of the driving forces in organizing church meetings of a non-denominational sort to be held at the naval station. Through the chaplain, she arranged for, she had worked very hard to get it organized so that the non-Navy people could go there also and have church meetings in this Navy chapel.
Was that chapel mostly then just for the Navy families?
Right, and the chaplain would use it for the Navy people.
Okay.
And so it turned out that she was quite interested in what we were doing as well, because that was kind of the same program, getting church business organized. And so one of the things we're doing, we would share some of our church materials with her, of course. We'd show her manuals, and Mom gave her a home evening manual that she could study and look at to see how to do home evenings and to find materials to use for Sunday school lessons and everything else. And in the process of reading through these materials, she found a lot of references to Book of Mormon scriptures, and so she's calling up and saying, where are these, what's this about? What are these references?
Good thing you asked.
And so I gave her a Book of Mormon, and within like 2 weeks, she called us up on the phone, and I remember getting a phone call from Sister Collier, and she's saying that she had been reading the Book of Mormon that we gave her, and that it had been a very singular and unique experience for her, and that she couldn't really go into the details because of the nature of her experience, and I still don't know exactly the details of that, but she said because of that she knew that was a true book. And she wanted to, based on that experience alone, she wanted to join our church, which turned out to be a big problem for her and her family, because her husband had struggled to even go to church at all, even with her. He wasn't interested in church. It had been a big struggle for him, and they'd had a lot of family strife just with her trying to get him to go to any kind of church, and he'd finally started doing it and supporting her and going to church with the family, and now she wanted to change churches and become a Mormon. And they were Southern people, they were from Tennessee, and he had already been influenced to a great degree to be sort of a Mormon hater because of the traditions and the trends in the South, especially, to be against the Mormons. That it was a strange sect, and that it was something to be feared and to stay away from. And so it was a big issue in their family. They ended up divorcing, actually, partly because of that, because she felt she joined the church. She and the children were all baptized and joined the church, and we worked with him and tried our best, and actually became friends with him to a large degree, but he softened quite a bit on his attitude about the family being involved in church, but he never would study or himself or give it any personal consideration that he personally would want to join the church. So
they got divorced shortly after that, or a long time
no,
after
it took a while, and it didn't happen in Puerto Rico. It was later on, after they had moved and we had moved away and were living in the States. But
so do you know where the Collier family is now?
I think they're probably still in Tennessee.
The wife,
right?
That got baptized.
Right. We stopped to see them on our way to, when we moved from Texas to Virginia, actually we stopped in Tennessee and went to see the Colliers.
What city in Tennessee?
Lived in Cleveland, I think Cleveland, Tennessee. You know, if you remember.
When we visited the Lancasters too at the same time, right?
We did stop and visit the Lancasters on that same trip.
Did they live in Tennessee?
No, they were in Memphis, I think, at that time.
That's Tennessee.
Right outside of
Oh, yeah,
It's
okay.
like Germantown, I think.
Okay, Tennessee, but it's different
Memphis,
parts.
right? Okay.
Not the same town.
Mm.
All right. Well,
and we still have contact with the Lancasters. They live here in Bountiful, Utah now, but
yeah, I got to take a golfing lesson from him
right.
a couple years ago.
We haven't had contact with the Colliers for a long time, but
So it sounds like your branch was successful.
we had a lot of success. We started out holding. I made arrangements also through the Navy to borrow just one of their buildings to hold our church meetings. Of course, we couldn't go to the same chapel because that's where the other people were, because I was busy. But there was a small chapel for the Seabees within the Seabee camp, and there was enough room for our group to meet there, and they let us use that little chapel and a couple of rooms in a library for the Seabees. It was nearby.
Did the non-denominational branch grow too, or did that ever?
I don't remember what became of them.
Yeah.
We didn't really track that.
No. If you can't, I have another question for you, unless you wanted to say something else about that.
Go ahead.
This is the last question, and then we're going to interview Mom, and then we're going to interview you together a little bit. Tell me about how you met Mom.
Oh, that's easy. When as a returned missionary during my first year back at BYU, in those days they still had what they called mutual or MIA for not only the youth, but the younger adults were considered part of that organization as well. So nowadays it's a young men, young women organization, and when you turn 18 you're out of it. But back then they still had young adults involved in what they called the MIA. And so we had mutual meetings in our student wards. Mom was one of the counselors, I think, in the MIA. I didn't always go to it, but every once in a while I did, and I noticed that I noticed her because she conducted the meeting every once in a while. And so that's how I first became aware of her, and then later on I was assigned to be her home teacher. And so I became better acquainted with her by going to make home teaching visits. And so that's how we became acquainted.
And your siblings' names.
Okay. My parents named me Sharon Joyce and
Your
called me
parents' name?
Sharon. And my mother named all of her kids with a J middle name, so I did too.
Oh, really?
That's where that story comes from. I was born in Albuquerque, New Mexico on January 26, 1945. And it was just before the end of World War II, so there were still ration stamps. My father was working for TWA there. And
It's an oil company?
TWA was an airline.
Okay.
And they took me to the LDS church to be blessed, you know, like a christening kind of thing, even though my father wasn't practicing his religion and mother wasn't a member. And the man who signed my blessing certificate turned out to be in our ward here in South Jordan when we moved here. His name was Theron Hutchings. I thought that was an interesting circle of fate.
Yeah.
We lived there until I was almost 2, and my parents moved to Bidder, Texas, and they had Kathy. And my dad tried building a house there out of cinder blocks. He started with the garage, and I can remember that house. But we left there when I was 5, so I don't know where my earliest memory is in there. I know we had chickens. I can remember when they built the indoor plumbing for the bathroom facility
In Biter?
in Williamson Settlement, and that's outside of Biter.
Okay.
Then when I was 5 years old, we moved to Oxford, Mississippi, and my daddy worked for Mid-Valley Oil Company. And I started kindergarten on the campus of Ole Miss University. And one of my favorite things that we got to do there is when Mother would come and pick us up, we would go to the campus bakery and buy glazed donuts. And the baker would always give us a baker's dozen, which was 13 instead of 12. We thought that was pretty cool. But I often think that being on that university campus set me up in a small way to want to go to a university, but I don't know. In 1955,
Or was it the baker's dozen? That's it.
yeah,
That was just hot
donuts
donuts.
and university.
Right.
Mother was pregnant with Sandra, and my father transferred companies and went to work in Dallas, Texas for another oil company. And he traveled that entire year to Venezuela. And I thought that was really exciting that he would travel so much and go to a foreign country. And he had lots of opportunities to travel to foreign countries. Turns out he did it as a youth and then as an adult in my life. Sandra was born, and then in just a year later, we moved to Ponca City, Oklahoma, and I was in 6th grade, and Keith, with my youngest brother, was born there. And Ponca City was great. I just went to my 40-year class reunion last October and did the little tour and got all nostalgic about what a great community I grew up in.
How long were you in Ponca City?
I graduated from high school in Ponca City in 1963, and
So you were there most of your growing up life?
yeah, when people ask me where I'm from, I always say Oklahoma. So, the missionaries came to our house to visit and try to see about getting Mother taught the gospel, because my father was a member of record. And my sister Kathy and I listened in to the discussions, and we liked what we heard and asked to be baptized. And we got to travel back to Williamson Settlement, and my father's father baptized us in Dead Hog Creek. And as I was coming up out of the water, I slipped on a piece of
Dead hog?
slimy wood, I'm sure. It was just, but you know, I've never forgotten the name of my baptism water. And
That's what we do in churches now.
yeah,
So you slipped and fell in the water and...
yeah. And my mother has a video of that, or a movie. She was taking
So you
movies
and
about
Kathy
me.
got baptized, but she did not? Your mother?
She didn't get baptized until I went away to BYU.
So how old were you when you got baptized?
I was 12.
12. And did you, were you active in church after that, or when
Yes,
active? Or?
very much. We lived in 3 different houses in Ponca City, and the third house we lived in was within walking distance of the church, maybe a mile. So it crossed a busy road, but I could walk if I had to. And members were very good to pick us up and take us. I went to state conference as a teenager. I went to youth conference.
Were there some influential leaders that you looked up to there?
The Cranes came there, the Rossons, the Woodrings, the McDonalds, Zabriskis. There were some great families there. And they had come to Ponca City from Utah, assigned to work for Conoco, and that's who my dad was working for there. And they let me babysit their children, so I got that experience. In high school, I gravitated towards the home ec classes. I took college prep classes. I liked social studies and history. I liked chemistry. I took advanced chemistry, but physics and I didn't get along.
You took advanced chemistry?
Advanced chemistry.
Okay. You enjoyed it?
I loved it. It's mathematical, so it made sense to me. I took Latin in junior high,
So you liked math too?
Uh-huh. And I took French, but I wouldn't take Spanish because I was prejudiced about it.
French is a little higher on the
Well, it seemed more exotic.
Right.
Everybody in the world could speak or
in
learn
Oklahoma,
Spanish.
you know.
So,
So in Oklahoma, you and your sister went to church, but most of your friends, their whole families went to church. Did you feel like you were a little different that way? Or?
my parents would go to church with us
Okay.
occasionally. Both of them smoked, and so they felt a little uncomfortable. But people were very, very nice to them, so I don't think they ever felt unwelcome.
Right.
I used to spend summers sometimes with my cousins in Williamson Settlement. Cousin Eileen, that you guys have heard me talk about, was a big influence. And she was going to go to BYU, and she said, I was thinking I was going to go to a junior college about 10 miles away, and she suggested I try to go to BYU. So my mother wanted me to go there so I could meet a returned missionary. And
At that time, she was starting to be more interested in becoming a member.
because she got baptized right after I left for BYU.
Right.
And she saw the value in someone marrying a member of the church, so I applied and got in because it wasn't so hard, I guess. But I really didn't get a lot of advice on what to major in, so my major was clothing and textiles, and that was kind of by default because it was the only thing I recognized that I was good at. But I took job development classes, and
Was there any event that sticks out in your mind when you were growing up that sticks out in your mind as memorable?
well, I was a city girl as compared to Daddy being a country boy. I thought our city had a population of 25,000.
Did you see the face he made?
Did you make a smirk?
I wish I had that on film.
And my parents would put me on the train. If we went south on the train, we would wind up in Houston, and relatives would come and pick me up, and I could go visit my cousins there.
Most of your cousins were in
My
Williamson.
father's side. And if we got on the train and went north, we could go to Kansas City, which is where my mother's family was from.
Great.
So I got to travel. The family would take vacations from time to time.
Your family was pretty well off with your dad's job.
I think we lived comfortably. My dad put all three of his daughters through college, never took out a loan. We didn't do anything to pay our own way. It was a big
Sent you
deal.
money to support you?
Actually,
Huh.
he gave us a lump sum at the beginning of the year, and we're supposed to make it last.
Make it last.
That was a very growing experience.
You had to manage your money.
Yeah. I was happy to leave home. I was excited to go to Provo. I had to ride a bus all the way out there.
Was that the furthest you'd been away from Oklahoma? Or?
Actually, my parents had taken me to California, and I'd been to Niagara Falls, and
So you traveled a little?
we had traveled a lot. I mean, I wasn't sophisticated about it anyway.
You spoke
It
some
was a
French.
small
You
town
took
girl.
her.
I made all my own clothes. I wore dresses every day. I liked to dress up. And I made a new dress every week, and I paid for the fabric myself with babysitting money. I worked in the school office in the high school to make money and keep busy. We had
Like a secretarial work?
a clerk kind of thing. We
And
didn't
then what did you
use
spend your money on?
fabric.
To make more clothes?
Yeah, that's all I was
This is
interested
something that's
in.
continued on into your
Yeah.
life. Throughout your life.
That's why I majored in fabric.
What was it like being the oldest child in your family?
My
Did you
mother
feel
had
like-
two sets of kids. Kathy and I are 2 years apart, and then Sandra and Keith are 2 years apart. But between the two sets, there's 8 and 10 years. So I was the babysitter,
Uh-huh.
and Kathy was the baby for a long time. So that kind of displaced her, and it caused some problems. But we led different lives.
You were so much different.
She was
in
more
age.
outgoing, it seemed like, and I was more studious, and I don't know. Carrie,
She didn't
right.
care as much, but didn't care about the things you cared about.
I was more serious about life. She
Mhm.
was out to have a good time, and she was fun to be with.
You said, I guess that you liked math. I didn't know that. I didn't know you liked math and chemistry, but I guess you.
I have a BS from BYU.
Right.
But not in math or chemistry.
Did
You
you?
have to have sciences as a
Right.
background, and I have a business minor, but I didn't do languages very well.
Oh, I was going to ask if you had. There were some pictures of you here. Can we get these pictures on the camera?
But what was your BS in, Ma?
Clothing and textiles.
Which involves math, right?
Well, back then, the way they divided it up, if you took X number of hours in sciences, you got a BS.
Oh, that's how it's determined? I didn't know.
All right.
These are the hideous pictures of
Can
me
you
as a child.
just go through briefly and tell us what are all of these pictures of?
That's mother being really happy right there in the middle, huh?
No, this photographer asked me to smile 3 times, and I was mad at him because I thought I was smiling. Looks like the same. Here, I was a
Same
brownie.
photographer?
I have on my brownie uniform.
Oh, you're a brownie.
Oh, is that what the thing is on your head?
Yeah, a little beanie.
Mm-hmm.
And there's my little,
You want to go through these
Picture.
photos at all?
not
A little
necessarily.
older. Okay. Just more of the same.
Right. These are all like
Just growing up.
middle school years.
You
What
always
about
had-
this one on the
you always
left?
had
You
dark
look
hair?
old.
I started wearing glasses when I was in the 5th or 6th grade.
What grade is that? That looks old.
I think it's 7th, but I made that dress. Are there more pictures here?
Yeah, there's a lot.
I went to get a permanent that day. That picture was taken. It's the most gross of all.
Mhm.
This is my junior year
How did they
picture.
fix hair like
Girls
that?
always change their hairstyles as they're growing up. That's you right there with light
That's
colored
Kathy.
hair? Okay.
That's my sister.
Was she jealous of your jet black hair?
She was never jealous of me. This is Sandra. These are pictures of Keith.
Mom, this picture looks like a perm. That one does not.
That is a kinky perm.
So what's
It's
this thing on the
frizzy.
left?
It probably was permed, but I had at least curled it and set it myself.
You controlled your frizz. I think I can't tell.
So
but
these
it's so
clothes,
frizzy.
were
I
some of
made
these made?
these.
Okay, you made those.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's turn the page. And
These
these
are-
are friends?
These are all my friends in Ponca City. I saw every one of them at my class reunion.
Oh my goodness.
Every one of them. This boy wanted to trade stamps with me. And he said, well, let's just trade them straight across for face value. And he got a 50-cent stamp for 2 cents, and I've never forgiven him. This girl married my high school boyfriend.
Really?
This is Laurie's namesake. These 2 pictures are both Laurie's.
One of your
namesake.
close friends?
Mm-hmm.
What kind of things did you and Laurie do together?
I just kind of wanted to rub shoulders with her. She was raised as an only child. Her brother died young, and her mother was my Latin teacher. And she took Laurie to the beauty shop every Saturday and had her hair done. Laurie could play piano, saxophone, oboe. She typed faster than any other student in school.
Do you think
And
that's
she
when
made
you
straight A's.
Do you think that's when you decided you wanted your children to learn to play the piano?
It had an influence. I met her in 6th grade, and I just called her 2 weeks ago when her mother passed away. I just got an email
Where does she
from
live
her.
now?
She lives in Oklahoma City.
Okay. You got an email from her? What's her name?
Sandria.
Okay.
This is the girl I stayed with when we went to the 40th reunion. This is my boyfriend and his wife.
Still happily married,
This
huh?
girl and this girl and this girl are coming to my house next April for
What? What was your boyfriend's name?
Richie.
Okay.
Did they all get kinky
There's
perms too?
Laurie as a senior.
Did you buy all these photos from school?
We
or-
traded them.
You traded them? Okay.
Oh, is that the boy with the 2-cent stamp right there in the corner?
Yes.
I recognized his round head.
His
Yeah.
head, yeah. Didn't
He's a
change.
redhead. And this is my cousin Eileen. That
Fighter, junior
Yeah.
high. Okay.
Oh, it does look like her.
Yeah, I always see the resemblance.
and this is me, a brand new freshman at BYU.
Where'd you live, in a dorm? Or
I lived in Budge Hall of Helaman.
Okay.
This must be the lobby then, huh?
Is it the lobby or inside your apartment?
With pictures on the wall, it was not my apartment.
It's definitely the lobby.
This was
Alright,
like
what are
my
those?
senior class trip. We went to some river rafting event. And this is me here.
Mm-hmm.
This is Mr. Ludrick. He came to our class reunion. Still looks exactly the same. A beanpole. Very, very nice
There's
person.
some guys roughhousing.
Yeah.
Where are they
I don't-
roughhousing? Oh, down there.
I don't think kids today could go on that river trip. It was not well chaperoned,
Mm-hmm.
but we behaved ourselves.
Okay.
You through with that
Mhm,
page?
mhm.
Yeah, cool page.
And this is more pictures of the river raft trip.
With underwear hanging to dry.
Mhm.
You went swimming.
Yep.
Is that you right there?
Mhm.
With
With a
the
BYU sweatshirt on.
and some sort of plaid thing.
Is that a cougar in the front?
Yeah, that was the
Did you-
BYU sweatshirt.
Hmm.
So you were a senior in high school
Mhm.
in Polka City.
Who'd you
Yeah.
sucker into getting you a BYU sweatshirt?
I don't know who brought that
Maybe
to
Cousin
me, but
Eileen.
we had a lot of people. And this is one other girl that's going to come to the reunion, Mary Ashton.
Just some family pictures at the beach.
This is in Galveston, Texas.
With your brother and sister.
I went to a clothing store in Ponca City, and they were having a special sale. And if you popped a balloon, you could get 10% or 20% or 50% off the clothes. And I popped a 50% off balloon. That's the first store-bought clothes I'd gotten for a long time.
Living on your own was what, Ma?
It was hard.
Oh, okay. Horrible,
She
she
said
said.
Cousin Eileen was the only person I knew to be friends with, and she lived in a different residence hall than I did, so I would have to trek over to her place to see her. And it took a few months, but eventually I made friends with the girls in my hall and wound up being president of the, I want to keep saying dormitory, but I think Sarah doesn't like that word.
Thank you. I appreciate the original.
And my third year at BYU, I stayed in Budge Hall and served as a
Resident assistant?
yeah,
Senior resident, I think, so it's
senior
on your
resident
door.
was called. I had a private apartment, and I was responsible for about 40 girls on my floor. And I had lots of fun. I was friends with those girls, and we had a great time. The girl in the little nightgown was one of my better friends.
Where?
We saw a picture earlier.
Oh, okay.
The risque one.
Oh, I see.
She was from Texas, so we hit it off. And that was the year that Daddy was assigned to his home teach the resident assistants or senior residents. And he dated the girl on the first floor, and then he dated the girl on the second floor, and that was me. And he never did date the girl on the third floor because he got stuck on me.
Well, I thought he was your home teacher too, right?
That's what I said.
She
He
said
was
that he's
assigned
a
to be
teacher.
our home teacher.
Sorry, I wasn't listening carefully because I was looking at your
Yeah,
pictures.
those
You,
are pictures of me as a senior resident.
you were a senior resident.
Mhm.
Want me to photograph?
And you got inside your cabinet
Yeah.
just for fun.
Here, hold it for me to see. Okay.
Yeah, Mom.
Senior resident. And where's the cabinet photo? Right there? That's
Yeah.
weird.
She's curled up in there. And there's Mom and her
Dad.
dashing dad.
Is this your first date or?
It was one of our first dates. We were in
This is
charge of
March
five
'69.
guys. Well, I think we had a date before March, but
Mhm.
Musically.
we decided to. We had an odd courtship, I think. Something I got
At least some pictures here of somebody you dated before Dad.
yes.
So the first year was kind of bad, but then you got better.
Yeah. At the end of my freshman year, Eileen and I stayed in Provo and worked. It was my first real job. I worked as a waitress in a city center cafe, which is still on State Street in Provo.
And it's still the City Center Cafe?
It's a motel and a cafe. And that lady took me under her wing and tried to teach me how to work. And of course I spoke with an Oklahoma accent, which attracted customers. And I smiled easily, and I was complimented for smiling. There was a man that would come in every day for a cup of coffee, and the coffee cost a dime, and he would always put a quarter on the counter. So I got to keep the change, and I just thought that was the funnest thing, to
Great.
get paid for serving a cup of coffee and other meals. But this lady fussed at me because I didn't hold a broom correctly, I didn't know how to sweep the floor. And
Your mother never taught you how to swim?
I think she just
She was just
was
honoring.
a fanatic, yeah. But I liked it, but I got homesick. So in August I took the bus and went home for a month and got my batteries recharged and went back as a sophomore. I was a lot happier my sophomore year. That's when I was made the dorm president. I knew more people. I knew my way around. I was more relaxed. I dated a lot of returned missionaries. Kept looking for Daddy, but apparently he was on his mission. Oh, my mother's mother died my freshman year at college, and with her inheritance, she bought me my contact lens, which I bought in Provo. That was a big
You
relief.
threw away your glasses the
I
same
threw
day.
them away.
And
Crunched
she
them up.
hasn't owned a pair since she got
These
blind
reading
again.
Glasses. I did not like how I looked in glasses. It did not make me feel pretty.
And so you got married what year?
We got married September 9th, 1966, 9966.
In the Idaho Falls
Temple.
Temple.
I'd gone home for the summer to get ready for the wedding. I don't know what you're supposed to do to get ready because we had the party in Idaho, but in August I decided I'd been away from him too long, and so I got on a bus and went back to Idaho and lived with him for a month. But he was working
In
from
his
5
parents'
o'clock
house?
in the morning until dark, and
Mhm.
so I never saw him.
So you're still
I kissed him
missing-
good morning and I kissed him good night, and
Mm-hmm.
then we finally got married. He drove a Forest Service car, a 1957 Chevrolet that was painted forest green. And his roommates had named it Taxi, so that was our first car, the Taxi.
And on your honeymoon, didn't you eat some sort of goat or something?
No, we had no honeymoon.
Mm.
We spent the night in the motel in Preston, Idaho, and then went right to Provo and started school. But that first semester, his father went to the cattle auction, and they brought in a goat, and he bought it for like $5, and cut it up and brought it to us. I don't think Burness cut it up, but he had
Had
it
it cut.
butchered.
Mm-hmm.
Not that he, I'm sure they butchered plenty of deer on their kitchen table. He should have talked about that. Because he
His
could just go
father
out the
always-
backyard hunting.
Go out in the background and shoot some deer.
They grew up on meat and potatoes. His mother worked hard cooking meals for people.
Very different
From
from
scratch.
Yeah, everything from scratch. And she didn't drive, so she didn't go to town, so she cooked with what she
Like
had.
a pioneer.
Right,
But you guys grew up in the same time era, not time
Uh-huh.
zone, but same time.
right,
He says where he grew up, there's the women jobs and the men jobs.
right. Well, during the 50s, it was, most women stayed home and kept the home.
But did your mom cook 3 meals a day and clean the house and you had to help while the men were out earning a living? When you describe your
Well-
childhood, it sounds like our childhood.
It was more like yours because it was the city. You know, my father went to an office and my mother just tended the house and the kids.
But she had to
But
do
she
the laundry and the cooking and the cleaning.
She did,
Right.
but she had automatic washer and dryer.
Higher, more technology.
Yeah, I
She didn't
remember
go
a
hunting.
Ringer washing machine in the early 50s.
Oh,
Seems like he described how it goes through the ringer thing and then
You had to set up 3 tubs
Yeah.
to rinse. She did that in her kitchen for years. They left Idaho in in the 60s, and that's when she first got modern appliances.
But did you have that kind of washing machine set up growing up? The 3-ton?
When we lived in Mississippi, we had a wash house back behind our house. It was really maid's quarters. It was Mississippi, so there's like this little house behind our house, and that's where she had her washing rooms.
But was it the 3 tubs or was it more
Yeah.
automatic?
I used to love to go to Texas and help Eileen and her mother do the laundry, run it through the wringer and hang it up on the line.
But what did you guys have growing up?
We had a washer and a dryer.
And they're just simple, like normal kind.
just like we have now.
Sheesh. Different world the father lived in.
Mm-hmm.
Was, other than your first year of school, what was the most difficult experience you had, and how did you endure it, overcome it?
In my whole life,
No, before you went to this school,
Childhood.
in your childhood.
my father was hard.
And how did you deal with it?
I moved away from home.
Okay. All right. You've already told us how you met Dad. That was my last question.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll adjourn this meeting and have an interview of both of them now, starting from when you got married.
Okay. She felt like, and he supported her, that the kids should be kids and should play and not work.
Right.
And they wouldn't even let me get an after-school job.
But what play did you do then? What'd you do around the house?
When I was really little, I liked to play outside and with mud,
Make
play
mud.
house. We played house a lot as kids.
Did you have dolls when you were a kid? Did you
Oh
have
yes,
dolls?
right.
Oh, we played with your
My
dog, right?
mother made doll clothes for me, for my doll. I can remember in Mississippi, when I was like 5 and 6 years old, playing outside with mud and stuff like that. And we had a dog there named Ruffy, but I wouldn't take care of it, and they put it to sleep, and I didn't even miss it for 2 or 3 days,
You
apparently.
just weren't a dog person?
I should be.
Yeah.
And when we went to Texas, there were lots of pine trees there, and we would go out in the woods and build little houses with pine needles and make walls and stoves
You and your sister,
couches.
or you and some
My
friends?
cousins.
Cousins.
When we would go to Texas, I would play with Eileen, and Kathy would play with Linda Jean, so we had our own separate friends.
Yeah.
Eileen went to BYU and Linda Jean did not, but Kathy did, so it's just Kathy didn't keep that friendship going.
Right.
And I've always had Eileen as a constant in my life.
Were there any teachers in school that were influential? Like Dad shared us some stories about a teacher who taught him boxing, and a teacher who helped him become interested in...
I had a teacher when we moved to Dallas, and I was, 10 or 11 years old. It was the first time I could ever remember moving, because we'd lived in Oxford for the first 5 years of my schooling. And it was very traumatizing, that move was. And I would get up in the morning and feel sick. And they finally took me to a doctor, because every morning I was sick, but it was just nerves.
Nerves, right? And then you moved to Oklahoma after that?
Yeah, and I was calmer there, but I was also older, so maybe more used to it. But their marriage was under stress because Daddy was traveling, there was a new baby, she was colicky, she cried all the time. You just can't imagine how hard that is to live around a kid that never stops crying.
Yeah.
And it was very hard to like her as a person from day one, because she was such a crier. And that's sad,
Yeah,
because we're not close.
right.
And part of it's, there's 10 years difference in our...
And as a 10-year-old, maybe
Right.
you're not so interested.
Right.
But you didn't have to help take care of the kids? You said you
I
babysat them.
babysat. I mean, I was 12 years old when we moved to Oklahoma, so old enough to tend Sandra and Keith. But then I would get hired, and that was more fun.
And your father let you get hired to babysit? You weren't
He
a
did.
kid then? Yes, it's Sandra.
Right. I know I dusted. I had to clean my room, but they let me learn how to sew, and I spent all my free time sewing from 6th grade, 7th grade on.
Did you have, at church, did any of your teachers at church encourage you to read the scriptures and when was the first
I
time that you
never-
did read the scriptures?
I did not read the Book of Mormon until I was a freshman at BYU. And quite frankly, that's where I got my testimony. I think I love the church,
Right.
but I love the gospel when I went to BYU. That's when I was converted. And I think a
How
lot,
were you converted? What,
just the
by
Spirit.
reading the scriptures
Right.
and understanding them?
Right. Because I went to church for social reasons. And it was a big deal to go to the Mormon church. My friends were Presbyterians and Methodists.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't mind being different from them. And they were nice enough to accept me. It was kind of fun to be different.
Right.
You didn't suffer any prejudice in the South?
Nope. All my friends liked me just the way I was. None of them have asked me, what makes you so special? They'll
Yeah.
either.
You behaved similarly to them, though. They had certain high standards. They were living the same
Yes.
as you did, right?
Right.
Right.
In fact, it's interesting to have come back together after all these years and see how much we have in common
Mm-hmm.
and not have the church in common, I think.
Right.
But I'm the one that had all the kids. They either had none, one, or two. No one had more than two. So they're good women.
All right. Can you think of any more questions? I can't.
I'm just gonna.
Yeah.
We on Friday nights, or Friday and Saturday nights when I was in high school, we would drag Grand. We had a certain 1 or 2 mile strip that we would drag back and forth and see who was out. And then sometimes we would stop at the drive-in, kind of like a Sonic drive-in today, and have a drink. Or we would go to the bowling alley and hang out. But we had a crowd of friends that we did things with, and it was a quiet, crime-free community. It was strongly supported financially by Conoco. The people that I associated with, their fathers all had white-collar jobs, and we had a few Indians in our school and a few blacks, and so we felt like we were not prejudiced, but we weren't best friends with them either.
They weren't totally included in everything.
They didn't run in my crowd, but I didn't hate them.
Right.
There's no meanness that you saw
Right.
exhibited towards them.
Right.
Okay.
None of the
But-
loser kids in the school picked on them? You didn't have white trash kids in your school?
No, we had good kids. And I knew everyone in my senior class working in the office. I had access to all of their records, and I would look at them, see where they were going to school for college or what their grades were. So,
Oh, I saw in your photo album a lot of pictures of your parents. Looked like they visited you while you were at BYU.
my mother came out right after she got baptized to see me. She wanted to see Salt Lake.
So that was a happy occasion.
Uh-huh. But I was so caught up in my own thing, I don't really, she came with friends, so
Mhm.
she just mostly said hi and bye, and
Right.
we didn't interact a lot after that. Both my parents made a point of coming to my graduation in 1967. That was a big deal. It was the first time my father had come out. But I was the first in the family to graduate.
That's a good thing. Yeah,
Mhm.
good deal. But then, didn't some of your younger siblings graduate from college?
Kathy got a nursing degree at BYU. Sandra has a degree in Russian from BYU.
Right.
Did your mom, had she already gone through school when you got your degree?
Mm-hmm. She was already a nurse.
So she did that when you were in high school?
Sandra, I think, was 7 or 8 years old when Mother went to nursing school.
So is that one reason you had to babysit a lot, was because she was busy with school, or?
I was probably starting BYU about then. I think I left.
You think
When I
nursing
was
school happened?
18, Sandra was 8, and that's when she started nursing school.
It's too bad that she didn't do
My
it when you were in
father
high school.
felt like she needed to have some career options in case anything happened to him early. And she had not even graduated from high school, so it was a scary thing to her, a big deal. And she had to drive like 20 or 30 minutes to the school. So,
Pretty pretty stressful for her. I remember her telling us.
Yeah. Was that something you bonded
She
with?
was a role model to me as far as keeping house. She
Really?
kept a clean house, but she's I'm speedier than she is at doing things. I'll flip, slap, slam, get it done, and she's more thorough. So I know to slow down sometimes, but
You have your own style.
I remember how she spent so much time working in the yard, and I would never go out there and help her. I would read a book rather than go out in that heat.
You didn't want to suffer in the heat.
I didn't, but now that I have my own home and my own yard, I love it.
An air
I
conditioning
find a lot of
too.
peace being in the yard.
Yeah. What books did you enjoy reading? One
I
of your
read
favorites
every
was-
Earl Stanley Gardner book.
Who the credit is he?
He wrote Perry Mason.
Oh.
And I read all the Nancy Drew books and all the Bobbsey twin books.
Those are popular then, right?
And then I started reading classics.
Right.
I think I had a
You had a
great
pretty
education.
well-rounded education, yeah.
I like to learn, and I like to know about current events. I don't want to be considered,
Ignorant.
Yeah.
Right. Those are some great memories.
Maybe it comes from growing up in a town where there was a lot of prosperity and where everyone was mostly educated.
Education was very valued. In some ways, I think Daddy was lucky to have served a mission because it wasn't strongly talked about. It wasn't like we do now. We teach our children from the very beginning. You're going to go on a mission and share the gospel. And then his mother had been to college, but his father hadn't. So his brother only went a year. His sister Mary's graduated from BYU. And Catherine could never decide what to major in, so she didn't finish college. Anna got married when she was 18, and after her kids were all in school, she went back to school and has a master's degree now. So I think both of us knew education was important. My dad,
You certainly would never let us skip a day of school.
well, what would I do with you at home all day?
Exactly.
My dad wanted to be an electrical engineer. The work he did was an electrical engineer, but he didn't have that certificate, and he would tell me sometimes how hard that was on him.
It was a disadvantage.
He felt like he missed opportunities for advancement and pay increases.
The 1800s. And when it was originally built, they had there were two chimneys right in the middle of the house, and the house was designed so that each room could have a stove in it. And they go up these chimneys, and so originally every room, I remember as a small child that every room did have a little wood or coal burning stove. So if you wanted to be in that room, then you'd put a fire there.
During the winter, but during the summer it was okay.
Yeah.
It was adobe walls, and it stayed cool inside.
But for whatever reason, I guess my parents didn't want to keep up with lighting fires every day and hauling out the ashes from all the stoves and all the work involved in doing that. So they stopped using the stoves and eventually took the stoves out, and the first step after that was an oil burning heater in the living room in the lower level of the house, and we had that, and we had the cooking stove, which was in the kitchen, and we burned coal in that. And so between those two sources of heat for the winter, but none of the upstairs part of the house had any heat.
So it's pretty cool.
And then eventually my dad bought a used furnace that had been in, I think it had been in the pool hall or the bar in town, and they'd taken it out of there, and it was a coal burning furnace, and in order to be able to put it in the house, he wanted to put it in below the house. So they knocked a hole in the side of the foundation and dug a small basement under the house and put this furnace under there. But they did not put flues they didn't put flues all the way to the top of the house, only in the lower level of the house.
Thinking it would rise, the heat would rise.
Somewhat.
Right.
Well, they just
But
gave them
then-
lots of blankets.
And the kids' bedrooms were on the upstairs level. We never did have.
So you bundled up.
We never had heating in there.
Right. And did you spend the night there once?
I did it, well, I lived up
That
with
you
him
lived-
for a
right.
month. But that was in August, that was okay. But
Oh,
I visited after
during
we
the
were
winter.
married. And it was cold up there.
Didn't
Heavy
you-
blankets.
Dad, didn't you see you had to fill bottles with hot water or something?
We did.
Take them to bed?
If we wanted to, we'd fill. Actually, they were vinegar bottles, I guess. They were quart-sized bottles that we would use and fill them with hot water and put the lid on tight.
Why vinegar
Sometimes we would use just regular hot water bottles, which were rubber. Whatever works there.
bottles? If you have the
It could
regular
have been
rubber
vanilla,
hot-
it could have been.
Wait,
A
Whatever.
mayonnaise jar?
he had regular hot water bottles. Why use a jar?
We didn't.
So-
We didn't have a regular hot water bottle for everybody.
So after interviewing both of you, I see that you did have quite different childhoods. You did have quite different backgrounds, and so I think I understand now how Mom, when she met you, she was kind of nervous about the meshing together those two lifestyles, and those
Cultures.
two different kind of cultures. I remember her telling me once that she was a little nervous about that. Were you aware of that, or did you? How did you deal with that?
She always acted nervous.
Okay.
Smile when you say that.
But how did you reassure her, I guess?
Don't worry about
How did he reassure you, Ma?
Love conquers all.
Right.
I liked how humble he was, you know, he wasn't jaded or,
You saw how
Frugal.
hard he worked.
right. I liked, it's an Idaho farm boy.
Right. Just like Alicia.
Yep. That's why I let her marry James. I think she is,
It's sort of a similar
it is.
Because she could.
meshing marriage.
She's this spoiled little girl that's never had to work like I was, and James has worked hard all his life and earned his way and made his choices.
Was she nervous about that, as nervous as you were?
No,
Okay.
because James,
Reassured her.
yeah.
Don't worry about it. Well,
Oh, Paul's temple.
Yeah, go ahead, Ronnie. Show us Ma's
So-
wedding picture.
here's Mom at the open house, I guess, after the wedding.
I'm gonna sit here.
That was in the Clifton, Idaho chapel where Daddy went to church as a kid.
And I think this is interesting.
think I visited that
she
chapel.
made her own temple dress. And there's some pictures of it. Here's a picture of them in the newspaper, I guess. Oklahoma girl and Clifton man. And the cake.
We used peach for our
Peach was your color.
color, you know.
Nice. There's the taxi. Whoopee. Who wrote Whoopee? Grandma?
I think Anna,
Mm-mm.
Aunt Anna did that.
She decorated it.
Uh-huh.
What kind of car is this, Dad?
It's a 1957 Chevrolet.
The one that you had as a teenager?
No, I bought that after I came back from my mission.
Oh, from your mission. Okay. So, and then these are some friends and family.
Those are all family, all of Daddy's family,
Dad's family.
and my sister came.
Okay.
Don't you want to do it right side up?
Yeah. Good point.
And who's the family on the left
It's
is
like Bernice and Ruth and Mary and David and Catherine.
Catherine's the short one.
Uh-huh. She
All right.
was 8 years old then.
So you were married in. I'm sorry, I keep